I shouldn't have been in that room. That thought hit me the moment I saw the glass doors. My hand was still holding a silver coffee tray, shaking slightly. Not from weight, but from something I couldn't name yet. Inside, I heard shouting in German. Fast. Sharp. Angry. I didn't understand everything at first, but I understood enough. Something was going wrong. And someone powerful was losing control. I should have walked away. But I didn't. The hallway outside the conference room smelled like expensive wood and silence that didn't belong to people like me. My uniform felt too tight suddenly. Too visible. Too wrong for a place where men in suits probably earned in a day what I earned in months. I pressed my fingers around the tray tighter. Just deliver coffee. Leave. Disappear. That was my job. That was my life. But then, the door opened slightly. And I saw him. A man standing at the center of the room like the world belonged to him, until it didn't. His voice cut through the air. Das ist nicht akzeptabel, he snapped. I didn't need translation to feel the pressure in it. Something was collapsing. On the table, papers were scattered. A thick contract. Stamps. Signatures waiting to mean billions. And nobody was signing anymore. A translator stood near him, frozen. Then suddenly, the translator removed his headset. And walked out. Just like that. Silence didn't follow. Chaos did. A man at the head of the table slammed his palm down. German voices overlapped. English broke through. Arguments tangled like wires ready to spark. I stayed at the door. Invisible. Or at least, I told myself I was. Get him back, someone shouted. He's the only certified interpreter we had. No translator, no deal. That word hit harder than the rest. Deal. I didn't fully understand what it meant, but I knew enough. Money. Power. Reputation. Things that didn't belong to people like me. I shifted slightly to leave. That's when it happened. The billionaire turned his head. And looked directly at me. Not at the tray. Not at the coffee. At me. Like I had no right to exist there. His eyes were cold in a way that didn't feel like emotion. It felt like judgment. You, he said sharply. My breath stopped. I looked behind me instinctively. Nobody. Just me. I'm just serving, I started. He cut me off. Come here. 2 words. Not a request. Not even a command dressed politely. Just control. My legs moved before my mind agreed. That scared me more than anything. The room felt heavier the moment I stepped inside. Every person looked like they were measuring me and finding nothing worth keeping. One of the men leaned back in his chair. Is this a joke? He muttered in English. Another whispered something in German I caught perfectly. Sie ist nur ein Kellnerin. Just a waitress. I swallowed that sentence without letting it touch my face. The billionaire didn't laugh. He didn't even acknowledge them. He just stared at me. Do you speak German? The question hit like a test I didn't study for, but somehow already knew the answer to. I hesitated. 1 second too long. That hesitation said too much. Yes, I finally said. The room shifted. Not in relief. In disbelief. The billionaire tilted his head slightly. Fluent. I nodded once. My throat felt dry. I should have said no. I should have walked out. But survival teaches you a dangerous habit. You don't always tell the truth. You tell what keeps you standing. He gestured toward the table. Then translate. 3 words. That changed everything. I froze. I can't. Now. His voice didn't rise. That was the worst part. No anger. Just expectation. Like I was already his decision. I looked at the papers on the table. Then at the faces staring at me. Then at the door behind me. Freedom was right there. But so was something else. Curiosity. And something worse, opportunity. I stepped forward. The first sentence they asked me to translate was simple. But nothing about that room was simple. The German negotiator spoke fast. Too fast. My mind caught every word like broken glass. Threats. Conditions. Withdrawal. I translated carefully into English. My voice sounded different there. Smaller. But clear. When I finished, someone cursed under their breath. The billionaire didn't blink. Again, he said. I did. And again. And again. With every sentence, the atmosphere changed. Confusion faded. Control shifted. But not toward peace. Toward me. I didn't notice it at first. Then I felt it. Eyes weren't on him anymore. They were on me. At some point, someone interrupted. She's interpreting too precisely. I paused mid-sentence. Looked up. The man leaned forward. She's adjusting tone. That's not exact translation. My stomach tightened. He was right. I was adjusting tone. Because raw translation would have destroyed the deal faster. I swallowed. I'm translating accurately, I said quietly. The billionaire finally spoke again. Continue. Just that. No defense. No acknowledgement. But something shifted in his eyes. Slight. Almost invisible. Not trust. Not yet. But attention. Minutes passed like hours. My coffee tray was still in my hand. I didn't remember picking it up again after setting it down. My fingers ached. But I didn't move. Then. A sentence came through that made everything stop. The German negotiator said something sharp. Final. Non-negotiable. I translated it. The room exploded. No way. This will kill the merger. That's insane. Voices collided. The billionaire stood slowly. The chair scraped back. That sound cut through everything. He looked at me again. Not like I was invisible anymore. Like I was dangerous. Is that correct? He asked. My mouth opened. Closed. I nodded. That was enough. His jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw something crack in him. Not anger. Pressure. Real pressure. Like he was holding an empire together with bare hands. And it was slipping. He stepped closer to me. Too close. I could smell expensive cologne mixed with stress. You're sure? He asked again, lower this time. I should have stepped back. I didn't. Yes. A long pause. Then. Fix it, he said. My heart dropped. I can't, I'm just translating. His eyes narrowed slightly. That's what they all said before leaving. That line landed strangely. Like it wasn't about me. Like it was about someone else who had already failed him. Before I could respond. The door behind us opened again. A staff member rushed in. Sir, the translator left the building. We cannot continue. Silence. Heavy. Final. The billionaire didn't move. And then. All eyes came back to me. Again. I felt it before I understood it. The shift. Not just attention. Dependency. They were all waiting for me now. Like I was the only thread holding something massive together. My chest tightened. I whispered, almost to myself. I'm just a waitress. Nobody answered that. Because nobody agreed anymore. The billionaire spoke softly. But it hit harder than shouting. Then become something useful. My fingers went cold. That sentence didn't feel like an offer. It felt like a trap closing. And I realized something terrifying. I wasn't standing outside their world anymore. I was already inside it. And as I translated the next line, carefully, perfectly, I saw him watching me differently. Not respect. Not kindness. Something more dangerous. Interest. And I had no idea yet. That this was only the moment everything started to fall apart. Because I didn't just enter the deal. I interrupted it. I almost walked out, but his world didn't let me. My hand was already on the door handle. One step more and I would have been back in silence. Back to being invisible. But then. A voice stopped me. Wait. I turned slightly. A man in a fitted suit stood near the hallway. His badge said executive assistant. He looked at me like I was a missing piece of a puzzle he didn't know was broken yet. You speak German, right? I didn't answer immediately. That pause said more than words. Yes, I said finally. He nodded quickly, already stressed. Good. Come with me. Just for a few minutes. The main interpreter is gone. We just need basic help. Basic help. I almost laughed. If only he knew what basic meant to me. I followed him back. Not because I wanted to. Because something in the air felt unfinished. The conference room door opened again. And everything inside hit me like pressure. Not sound. Pressure. Men in suits. Expensive watches. Controlled anger. And at the center. The billionaire. He didn't look at me. Not even once. Like I was furniture that had been moved without permission. That should have hurt. But strangely, it didn't. Because I already understood something. He didn't ignore me because I was small. He ignored me because he assumed I didn't matter. Those are different kinds of blindness. Just translate what you can, the assistant whispered beside me. I nodded once. But I didn't sit. I stood near the wall instead. Distance felt safer. At first. The discussion started again. Fast German. Sharp English replies. Numbers. Deadlines. Legal pressure. I listened. Not like a helper. Like a threat detecting system. Something was off. Very off. A clause was being pushed too hard. Too urgently. That usually meant desperation. And desperation always meant risk. I translated only what they asked. At first. But then I noticed something strange. They were missing tone. Not words. Tone. A single phrase translated wrong changed everything. The CEO, he didn't even glance at me while speaking. But his words were sharp. Controlled. Cold. Too controlled. Like someone trying not to show panic. I leaned slightly toward the assistant. This clause, I whispered. He frowned. What? It's being misread. He looked irritated. Just translate. I stopped speaking. But my eyes stayed on the document. Something about it felt like a trap. Not legal. Personal. A phone buzzed on the table. Once. Twice. The billionaire didn't look at it. But I did. A message preview flashed. Only a few words visible. If this leaks, it's over. It disappeared before anyone else noticed. But I noticed. And my chest tightened slightly. Not fear. Recognition. The negotiation escalated. Voices overlapped. One man slammed his folder shut. This is not acceptable. The billionaire finally spoke louder. No renegotiation. Simple. Final. But the German side responded instantly. And this time, I caught it fully. A threat disguised as legality. If I translated it literally, the deal would collapse in seconds. If I softened it, I would be lying. Both choices felt dangerous. The assistant leaned in again. What did they say? I hesitated. Half a second too long. The billionaire finally looked at me. Not fully. Just slightly. But enough. And I felt it. Pressure. Like I was suddenly part of the table. Not outside it anymore. There, refusing compliance, I said carefully. That wasn't the full truth. But it wasn't a lie either. It was survival translation. The room reacted instantly. What? That's not what we said, someone snapped. The German negotiator stood. His voice rose. I caught every word now. Every hidden meaning. And my stomach dropped slightly. They weren't just refusing. They were setting him up. I stopped translating for half a second. Just a pause. But it changed the room. The billionaire noticed. Now he fully looked at me. Forgetting something? He asked. His tone wasn't angry. It was testing. Like he already suspected something. I swallowed. No. But my voice didn't sound certain. Even to me. That was the moment I understood something clearly. They didn't need me. They were just tolerating me. Until I became dangerous. The assistant whispered again. Don't improvise. Just translate word for word. I nodded. But my eyes stayed on the German speaker. Because now I knew. He was hiding something inside his sentences. Something that didn't belong in a contract. Something personal. Another message flashed on the phone again. This time I saw more. He must not know the sauce. Sauce. My mind caught that word. Not legal. Not corporate. Human. Someone was leaking from inside. And suddenly, the room didn't feel like a negotiation anymore. It felt like a cover-up. I translated the next sentence exactly. But I changed my tone slightly. Just enough. The billionaire noticed immediately. His eyes sharpened. You changed that. 3 words. Quiet. Controlled. But dangerous. The assistant froze beside me. My pulse hit my throat. I said quickly. He didn't respond. He just watched me. Like he was calculating whether I was useful. Or a problem. For the first time, I felt it clearly. This wasn't about language. This was about control. And I had accidentally stepped into the part they couldn't control. The German negotiator suddenly pushed a document forward. Final clause. Last chance. I read it before translating. And my fingers went cold. It wasn't just rejection. It was a silent trigger. If accepted, the company would lose everything. If refused, the deal would die instantly. Either way, someone was going to win. And someone already knew that. The billionaire leaned back slightly. His voice lowered. Translate it. No emotion. Just command. But I didn't speak immediately. because something inside me shifted. For the first time, I wasn't just translating. I was deciding what the truth sounded like in his world. I need a clarification, I said quietly. The room went still. The assistant turned toward me sharply. That's not your job. But I didn't look at him. I looked at the document. Because now I could see it clearly. The mistake. The hidden trap. The thing everyone else was missing. The billionaire stood slowly. Not angry. Focused. You don't question here, he said. I finally looked at him directly. And I surprised myself. I just did. Silence hit the room instantly. Heavy. Sharp. Even the air felt different. For a second, I thought I crossed a line I couldn't come back from. Then, something unexpected happened. He didn't shut me down. He studied me. Like I had become something unfamiliar. Not staff. Not invisible. Something else. The assistant whispered urgently. Apologize. But I didn't. Because I realized something terrifying. If I stopped speaking now, the deal wouldn't just fail. It would fail blind. The billionaire finally spoke again. Explain. One word. But it wasn't permission. It was curiosity mixed with control slipping slightly. And I knew. Whatever I said next would change everything. I looked at the document one more time. Then I said it. Slow. Careful. Real. And as the words left my mouth, I saw his expression change for the first time. Not anger. Not dismissal. Something closer to calculation turning into doubt. And in that moment, I understood the truth I wasn't supposed to know yet. His empire wasn't just collapsing around him. Someone inside it was already guiding the fall. And I was the only one who could hear the cracks forming. The billionaire's voice dropped. Say that again. But I already knew. This was no longer a translation. It was a warning. And I had just stepped into the center of his war without meaning to. Ending hook. The assistant grabbed my arm suddenly. Don't speak again unless I tell you. But the billionaire interrupted him without looking away from me. No. A pause. Then he said something that froze the entire room. She stays. And I realized. I wasn't being used anymore. I was being kept. I shouldn't have spoken. But silence was already too late. The room was already breaking. Not loudly. Quietly. Like glass under pressure, still holding shape, but seconds away from collapse. No one noticed when I stepped forward. That was the first mistake. A man slammed a folder shut. This clause is unacceptable. Another voice cut in instantly. Then walk away. We'll find another partner. Words clashed. Chairs shifted. Papers moved like nervous hands. And then, everything paused for half a second. Not because it stopped. Because no one knew who was supposed to fix it. The billionaire finally spoke. But his voice didn't rise. It dropped. Cold. Controlled. Enough. One word. The room obeyed, but not fully. Because the problem was still there. Unresolved. Breathing. The assistant beside me whispered urgently. Translate. Now. Just follow line by line. I should have nodded. I did nod. But my body didn't move immediately. Something felt wrong in the rhythm of the room. Like everyone was reacting to a version of the truth I hadn't heard yet. Then it happened. A German sentence landed heavy. Sharp. Final. I understood it instantly. Too instantly. My throat tightened slightly, not from fear, but from recognition. They weren't negotiating anymore. They were testing limits. I'll translate, I said. My voice came out quieter than I expected. Still, it cut through the noise. The room turned slightly. Not fully. Just enough to register that I had become part of it again. The billionaire looked at me. Not warmly. Not coldly either. Just, directly. Like I was a variable he hadn't accounted for. Go ahead, he said. No hesitation. No permission. Just expectation. The German negotiator spoke again. Faster this time. I listened carefully. Then translated. Slow. Controlled. Precise. But something changed halfway through. Not in the words. In the tone. Because I started choosing how the sentence landed. Not changing meaning. But shaping impact. A pause followed my translation. Too long. Too heavy. Someone at the table leaned forward. That's not what we meant. My stomach tightened. I kept my face still. I translated exactly. A lie. But also not a lie. It was exact. Just not emotional. The billionaire tilted his head slightly. Say it again, he said. This time softer. Not angry. Interested. That was worse. I repeated it. Every word. Carefully. And this time, silence didn't follow. Understanding did. The room shifted instantly. Arguments stopped mid-air. Pens froze. Even breathing felt louder. Because now everyone realized something uncomfortable. The deal wasn't failing because of disagreement. It was failing because of misalignment. Deliberate misalignment. The assistant looked at me sharply. You're overstepping. I didn't look at him. I'm translating. But even I heard it differently now. It didn't sound like a job anymore. It sounded like control. The billionaire leaned forward slightly. His elbows touched the table. First time he looked engaged. Where did you learn German like that? The question wasn't casual. It was scanning. Measuring. I hesitated. Just a fraction. University, I said. Not the full truth. Not the full lie either. A phone vibrated on the table again. Once. Twice. He didn't look at it. But I did. Just for a second. Enough to catch a fragment. Don't let her translate again. My chest tightened. Not fear. Awareness. Someone didn't want me speaking. That meant I was already important. Dangerously important. The German negotiator spoke again. This time slower. He knew I was catching everything now. He adjusted. Too late. I translated. But something in me shifted halfway through. Because I noticed something no one else did. A contradiction. A clause that didn't match the earlier clause. I stopped for half a second. That pause changed the room again. The billionaire noticed immediately. What? Just that. One word. But it pressed on me. There's a mismatch, I said quietly. The assistant snapped instantly. That's not your role. But the billionaire cut him off without looking. Explain. No emotion. Just command. I pointed slightly at the document. This part contradicts what was said earlier. The German side went silent instantly. Too silent. That silence wasn't confusion. It was calculation. The billionaire's eyes narrowed slightly. Are you sure? I nodded. And something in his expression changed. Not trust. Not yet. But attention deepening. Like a lock turning slowly. One of the German men stood. That's not accurate interpretation. My pulse hit my throat. I turned slightly toward him. And said something I didn't plan. I didn't interpret. I listened. That hit differently. Even I felt it. The room froze again. The assistant exhaled sharply. The billionaire didn't move. But his gaze didn't leave me now. Not even for a second. And then, something unexpected happened. He spoke in German. Directly to me. Not through the assistant. Not through the table. Just me. Repeat the clause exactly. My mind locked for a moment. Because now there was no space between us. No buffer. No protection. Just truth. I translated it again. Exactly. But this time I didn't soften anything. I let it land fully. The room reacted instantly. Uneasy shifting. Frowns. Whispers. Because now they heard what I had been hiding earlier. The clause wasn't just risky. It was destructive. The billionaire sat back slowly. Like he was processing something heavier than money. He didn't speak for a moment. Then. You caught that, immediately? Not admiration. Not disbelief. Just evaluation. I nodded once. My fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the table. I heard it. Silence again. This one different. Longer. Heavier. For the first time, he looked away from the documents. At me. Really at me. Not as staff. Not as invisible presence. As something interrupting his system. And I felt it clearly. This wasn't the end of confusion. This was the beginning of dependence. They would need me again. And again. Until I wasn't optional anymore. The assistant leaned closer. Don't get comfortable, he whispered. But I didn't feel comfortable. I felt watched. Studied. Held in place by attention I didn't ask for. The billionaire finally spoke again. Stay. One word. Simple. Heavy. Not request. Not invitation. Decision. And in that moment, I understood something I didn't want to understand yet. I didn't just translate the deal. I had stepped inside it. And now, they wouldn't let me walk out unchanged. Ending hook. As I turned slightly to leave the table, My phone vibrated in my pocket. One new message. Unknown number. Only 4 words appeared on the screen. I didn't go looking for him. I went looking for my exit. But the exit was already gone. My phone buzzed again as I stood outside the conference floor. Unknown number. No name. Just a message. Come to the top office. Now. I stared at it for a second too long. Then my legs moved anyway. Not curiosity. Not courage. Something worse. Obligation. The elevator felt too quiet. Like it was listening. Each number rising made my chest feel tighter, but I kept my face still. I told myself it was just another misunderstanding. Just another cleaning job mistake. Just a quick correction. Then I could disappear again. That was the lie I carried up with me. The doors opened. Glass walls everywhere. No warmth. No noise. Only reflection. And in the middle of it, him. The billionaire. Standing like the room belonged to his silence. He didn't greet me. He didn't even turn fully. Just said. Sit. One word. Flat. Controlled. Like I was already part of the decision. I stayed standing. Why am I here? That was my mistake. Because he finally looked at me then. Properly. Not like before in chaos. This was different. Measured. Cold focus. You're not here for questions. A pause. Then. You're here because you're useful. Something in my chest tightened. Not pain. Recognition. A folder slid across the table. It stopped right in front of me. I didn't open it. I don't work here, I said. A half-truth. He tilted his head slightly. You do now. Silence followed. Heavy. Not dramatic. Just final. I finally opened the folder. Numbers. Contracts. A salary figure at the bottom that made my hand hesitate. I hated that hesitation. That small betrayal inside me. My throat went dry. This is a mistake, I said quietly. He leaned back slightly. No. One word again. Too confident. Too certain. Like mistakes didn't exist in his world. Only decisions. A notification popped on my phone. I didn't check it immediately, but I felt it vibrate again. And again. Like something trying to reach me from a different reality. I ignored it. For now. I'm not hiring you as staff, he said. I looked up. That was the first crack in my control. Then what am I? A pause. He didn't answer immediately. That bothered me more than anything else. Because powerful people always answer fast. Unless they're hiding something. Interpreter, he said finally. Simple. Clean. But the way he said it? It wasn't about language. It was about access. I closed the folder slowly. I don't need money like this. That was another lie. He noticed it instantly. His eyes sharpened slightly. You think this is about need? A pause. It's about survival. That sentence hit differently. Because it wasn't wrong. It just felt wrong coming from him. My phone buzzed again. This time I glanced down. New message. Unknown number again. He is not offering you safety. My fingers went cold slightly. I locked the screen quickly. Looked up. He was watching me. Not my phone. Me. Someone is leaking inside your company, I said suddenly. The words left before I planned them. His expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes tightened. I know. 2 words. Too calm. Too controlled. Like it was already accepted damage. That confused me more than anything. If you know, why am I here? A pause. Longer this time. Then. Because they don't hear what I hear. He leaned forward slightly. And neither do I, fully. That was the first time his voice shifted. Not emotion. Something closer to pressure. Human pressure. For a second, I forgot I was standing in front of a billionaire. He looked less like control. More like containment. Like something constantly managing collapse. And failing in small ways. I'm not qualified for this, I said quietly. He stood. Finally moved. That made the room feel smaller instantly. You already proved otherwise. I frowned. When? His gaze stayed steady. Yesterday. A pause. You didn't just translate. My stomach tightened slightly. You interpreted what others missed. That wasn't a compliment. It was an assessment. A permanent label being placed on me. I looked at the contract again. My salary was still there. Still ridiculous. Still dangerous. Because money like that doesn't come without cost. My family needs support, I said before I could stop myself. The truth slipped out. That annoyed me more than anything. He didn't react emotionally, but his expression changed slightly. Like that answer was expected. Not personal. Just data. Then accept it, he said. Simple. Too simple. Like my entire life could be solved in one sentence. I should have walked out. I know that. I felt it. That moment. That clear warning inside my body. But instead, I asked the question that changed everything. What do you get from this? Silence. Long. Measured. He walked slowly to the glass window. Looked down at the city. Then said, control. No hesitation. No disguise. Just truth. That honesty should have scared me more. But it didn't. It confused me. I frowned slightly. That's it. He looked back at me. And for the first time, something flickered. Not emotion. Frustration. No, he said quietly. Then stopped. Like he didn't want to finish the sentence. That pause stayed in the air longer than his words. Something unfinished. Something hidden. Something heavy. My phone vibrated again. This time louder. I ignored it. But I already knew. It was getting worse outside this room. And I was choosing to stay inside it. I need an answer now, he said. No pressure in his voice. Just finality. Like he didn't believe in second chances. My fingers curled slightly around the folder. I looked at the salary again. Then at him. Then at the door behind me. 3 exits. None of them felt safe. I accept, I said quietly. The moment the words left my mouth, something in the room shifted. Not celebration. Not relief. Something quieter. Permanent. He nodded once. Like a transaction had completed. Nothing more. Nothing less. A new phone buzz came immediately. This time I didn't need to check it. I already felt it. Like the world outside had just changed its tone. He walked past me slightly. Stopped for half a second. Then said, "You'll start tomorrow." A pause. Lower voice. "And don't trust anyone here." Then he left the room. Just like that. No emotion. No explanation. I stood alone in the glass office. Holding a contract I should have never signed. My phone buzzed again. And this time, I finally looked. Unknown number. Only one line. "You just sold your silence." Ending hook. The elevator doors closed behind me as I left. But before they shut completely, I saw something on his desk through the glass reflection. A photo. And the person in it was someone I recognized from the conference room. Someone who wasn't supposed to be connected to him at all. I didn't realize silence could have a weight until I started working beside him. It wasn't the words that controlled me. It was everything he didn't say. The first morning, I arrived 5 minutes early. The office was already awake. Not noisy. Just active. Phones vibrating. Screens glowing. People moving like they were late even when they weren't. And in the center of it all, him. He didn't greet me. Didn't look up. Just said, "Start with the 9 a.m. call." Like I was already part of his system. Not a person entering it. A function continuing it. I stood near the glass wall while he spoke on the phone in German. Fast. Sharp. Uninterrupted. I translated in real time for the assistant beside me. But something felt different today. I wasn't just translating words anymore. I was translating pressure. A notification popped on my phone. Unknown number. Don't stay too close to him. I locked it immediately. Looked up. He hadn't moved. But somehow, it felt like he already knew I received it. After the call, he finally glanced at me. Just once. "Come." One word. Again. Always one word. Never more than needed. I followed him through corridors of glass offices. People stepped aside when he passed. Not respect. Distance. Like standing too close to him meant getting burned. And I was now standing inside that heat. Inside the meeting room, I noticed her. Before she noticed me. She didn't move like others here. She didn't rush. She arrived like she already owned the space. Perfect posture. Controlled expression. Expensive calm. And when her eyes landed on me, they stopped. Just for a second. Then dismissed me completely. Like I was temporary air. "Why is she here?" she asked. Not to me. To him. Her voice was smooth. But not soft. Controlled sharpness. He didn't look at her immediately. Just placed a file on the table. She translates. 3 words. No explanation. No defense. Just fact. Something in her expression tightened slightly. Then relaxed again. Too fast. Too practiced. She turned to me finally. Make sure you don't misunderstand anything. A smile. Not warm. Not fake either. Something worse. Competitive politeness. I nodded once. I won't. That was all. But inside, I already felt the line being drawn. The meeting began. Numbers. Contracts. Expansion talks. But I stopped hearing them as business. Because I started noticing something else. How she looked at him. Not openly. Not obviously. But in pauses. In timing. In the way she waited for his reaction before speaking again. And he didn't look at her the way he looked at anyone else. Not softer. Not warmer. Just aware. A message flashed on my phone again. I didn't check it. I already knew the pattern now. Warnings. Unknown voices. Gaps in information I wasn't supposed to see. Halfway through the meeting, something shifted. A clause in the contract was wrong. Not small. Structural. I translated it exactly. Then paused. Just a fraction. That pause was enough. The assistant leaned slightly toward me. Continue. But I didn't. Because I saw it. A hidden dependency clause. Something that shouldn't exist in a clean contract. I looked at him. He noticed immediately. Problem? He asked. I hesitated. Then said it. This section doesn't match the earlier draft. Silence. She spoke instantly. That standard wording. Too fast. Too confident. Too smooth. But I had already seen the inconsistency. And so had he. Because his eyes didn't move away from the document. They narrowed slightly. Explain, he said. Not to her. To me. That shift didn't go unnoticed. Her fingers tightened slightly around her pen. Just for a second. Then still again. I pointed carefully. This clause creates double obligation. It weakens your control in case of exit. A pause. The room changed temperature. Not literally. But it felt like it. He leaned back slowly. You caught that in one read. Not impressed. Not surprised. Evaluating. Before I could answer, she interrupted. She's interpreting emotions into legal text. That's dangerous. I turned slightly toward her. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. Not just dislike. Threat. He didn't respond to her. He looked at me. Is she wrong? The question wasn't casual. It was testing alignment. My chest tightened slightly. No, I said. Simple. Direct. That was enough. A long silence followed. The assistant stopped breathing properly. Even the air felt paused. Then she stood slightly. Maybe we should continue without unnecessary interruptions. The word unnecessary landed sharp. Directed. Not subtle. I didn't respond. But I noticed something else. He didn't look at her when she said it. He kept looking at me. That was the first crack. Not in the deal. In the structure around him. People didn't expect that. I didn't either. After the meeting, I stepped into the hallway. Exhale, I didn't realize I was holding left my body. Then. My phone vibrated again. Unknown number. She is not who you think she is. I froze slightly. Footsteps approached behind me. I turned. He was there. Closer than before. Not speaking immediately. Just watching me. Like he was measuring something he hadn't named yet. You're quiet today, he said. I blinked once. I'm working. A pause. That's not what I asked. Something about his tone felt different. Less controlled. Slightly off balance. Like something in his system had started reacting differently to me. That shouldn't have mattered. But it did. I looked at him carefully. She doesn't like me. He didn't ask who. He already knew. A small pause. Then. She doesn't like anyone who disrupts control. That sentence landed heavier than it should have. Because it wasn't a defense. It was explanation. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he said something quieter. You notice things others miss. I didn't answer. Because that wasn't a compliment. It was a warning disguised as observation. Later that evening, I stayed longer than I should have. Translating documents. Listening to meetings. Learning patterns I wasn't supposed to understand. And slowly, I realized something dangerous. His empire wasn't just complex. It was unstable in places no one was watching. Except me. A final message appeared on my phone before I left. Unknown number. You are now inside both of their systems. I turned the screen off immediately. But my hands didn't feel steady anymore. As I walked toward the elevator, I saw her again. Standing near his office. Watching me leave. Not angry. Not emotional. Just certain. Like she already knew this wasn't over. And when the elevator doors closed, I finally understood what my new role really meant. I wasn't just translating his world anymore. I was standing between two versions of it. And both of them had started noticing me. The elevator stopped halfway. Lights flickered once. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. This time? I answered. And a woman's voice whispered. Stop translating him, before he replaces you completely. I wasn't supposed to hear it. But silence has a way of exposing secrets. The door wasn't fully closed. That was the first mistake. Or maybe mine. I stopped outside the private meeting room because I recognized his voice. Not loud. Controlled. But different. Tired in a way I hadn't heard before. Then I heard another voice reply in German. Faster. Lower. Familiar. And my steps froze. I should have walked away. That was the rule. Don't listen. Don't stay. Don't become part of what you can't survive. But I didn't move. Because one sentence changed everything. The leak is still inside your circle. My chest tightened slightly. Not fear. Attention. Inside the room, glass reflected faint shadows. I shifted just enough to see through the crack. He was standing near the table. Still. Listening. Not reacting immediately. That alone felt wrong. Because he always reacts fast. Another voice spoke. Someone close to you is feeding them information. Pause. Then. It's internal. A silence followed that wasn't empty. It was heavy. Calculated. My fingers curled slightly. Internal. Not outside threat. Not competitor. Inside. Someone near him. I should have left. I didn't. Because the next sentence landed differently. She's already seen too much. My stomach dropped slightly. She wasn't specified. But something in me already knew. That was the first time I felt it clearly. I wasn't just listening anymore. I was included in something I didn't ask for. I stepped back slowly. Too late. A floorboard shifted. Just enough. Inside, the conversation stopped. Silence. Then. Who's there? His voice. Sharp. Immediate. My breath caught. I had 2 seconds to disappear. But I didn't. Because I made a decision I didn't fully understand yet. I stepped in. The room felt colder from inside. Not temperature. Presence. 3 men turned slightly. And then. He saw me. No expression at first. Just recognition. Then something else underneath. A shift. You were listening, he said. Not a question. Observation. I nodded once. Yes. That honesty came out before fear could stop it. The assistant beside him stepped forward quickly. She shouldn't be in here. But he raised a hand. Not angry. Just stopping him. Repeat what you heard, he said. My throat tightened slightly. Not because of fear. Because of choice. I looked at him. Then said it. There's a leak inside your circle. Pause. The information is coming from someone close. Silence again. But different now. Thinner. One of the men shifted uncomfortably. That's not confirmed. But he cut him off. Continue. Still calm. Too calm. I hesitated. Then added. They said it's internal. That word changed the air. Immediately. He didn't react loudly. That was worse. He just looked at me longer. Like I had crossed into something I couldn't leave easily. Who said it? He asked. I hesitated. And in that hesitation, something changed between us. He noticed. Of course he did. I didn't see their face, I said. Not fully true. But not false either. It was partial truth. The kind that survives longer. A long pause followed. Then he turned slightly toward the table. Leave us. The others moved instantly. Too quickly. Like they already expected collapse. When the door closed, it was just us. And silence. Real silence. Not empty. Waiting. He walked slowly toward the window. Didn't look at me at first. Why didn't you come immediately? he asked. That question wasn't about timing. It was about intent. I swallowed. I wasn't sure it was my place. That was the safest answer. But also the weakest. He knew that instantly. You're not paid to hesitate, he said quietly. Not harsh. Just factual. Something in me shifted slightly. I wasn't paid yesterday, I replied before I could stop myself. That made him pause. Just for a second. Then he turned. Finally looked directly at me. Not like before. This time? Measured suspicion. Tell me everything, he said. And I didn't. Not fully. Not yet. Because for the first time, I wanted control over information instead of survival. And I hated myself for that thought. I heard enough to know someone inside is leaking, I said carefully. But I don't know who. A pause. I could be wrong. That last line mattered. It gave me distance. Or so I thought. He studied me for a long moment. Then said quietly. You hesitated before telling me. My chest tightened slightly. That was the part one couldn't hide. Yes, I admitted. Silence. For the first time, his expression shifted slightly. Not anger. Something more dangerous. Awareness. You waited, he said. Not accusation. Understanding. Too calm. Too precise. I didn't respond. Because I realized something uncomfortable. He wasn't just analyzing the leak. He was analyzing me. Then he walked back to the table. Opened a file. Flipped a page. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. You'll stay closer from now on, he said. Not request. Adjustment. My fingers tightened slightly. Closer how? A pause. Then. You hear everything. That sentence landed heavier than anything else. Not protection. Not trust. Access. I looked at him carefully. And if I don't want that? Silence. Long. Then. You already do. That was the first time he assumed something about me without asking. And he was right. That scared me more than anything else. Days after that moment, things changed quickly. I followed him everywhere. Meetings. Calls. Private discussions. And I heard more than I should have. Too much. Pieces that didn't fit. A phone buzzed in my pocket constantly now. Unknown numbers. Messages I stopped opening immediately. But one line stuck one day. You just confirmed yourself inside his system. I started noticing patterns. People avoided direct answers near him. Voices changed tone when I entered rooms. And once, I saw someone delete a message mid-conversation. Right when I walked in. Something was wrong. Not obvious. Not loud. Structural. And then I saw her again. The woman from before. Standing outside his office. Watching me approach. This time, she didn't smile. You told him, she said quietly. Not a question. I stopped. Yes. She nodded slowly. Like she already expected it. He won't thank you, she said. A pause. He trusts patterns. Not people. That sentence stayed with me longer than I wanted. Because I realized something worse. I hadn't gained trust. I had entered evaluation. Inside his office later, he spoke without looking up. We're changing security protocols. I froze slightly. That fast. He didn't respond immediately. Then. It already happened. I frowned. What happened? He finally looked at me. And said quietly. We were tested. That word didn't feel corporate. It felt personal. Like something had already passed through us. And we failed without knowing. That night, I stayed late again. Documents spread in front of me. Patterns forming slowly. Too slowly. But clearly. And I saw it. A connection between names. Meetings. Transfers. Small inconsistencies that built into something bigger. Something intentional. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One line. Now you see it too. I turned off the screen. Slowly. Because I understood something I didn't want to accept yet. Someone was watching my awareness grow. Not his empire. Mine. As I closed the last file, the office door opened behind me. I didn't turn immediately. Because I already knew who it was. And he said one line I wasn't ready for. We don't have a leak. A pause. Now we have you. I heard enough to know someone inside is leaking, I said carefully. But I don't know who. A pause. I could be wrong. That last line mattered. It gave me distance. Or so I thought. He studied me for a long moment. Then said quietly, "You hesitated before telling me." My chest tightened slightly. That was the part one couldn't hide. "Yes," I admitted. Silence. For the first time, his expression shifted slightly. Not anger. Something more dangerous. Awareness. "You waited," he said. Not accusation. Understanding. Too calm. Too precise. I didn't respond. Because I realized something uncomfortable. He wasn't just analyzing the leak. He was analyzing me. Then he walked back to the table. Opened a file. Flipped a page. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. "You'll stay closer from now on," he said. Not request. Adjustment. My fingers tightened slightly. Closer how? A pause. Then. "You hear everything." That sentence landed heavier than anything else. Not protection. Not trust. Access. I looked at him carefully. "And if I don't want that?" Silence. Long. Then. "You already do." That was the first time he assumed something about me without asking. And he was right. That scared me more than anything else. Days after that moment, things changed quickly. I followed him everywhere. Meetings. Calls. Private discussions. And I heard more than I should have. Too much. Pieces that didn't fit. A phone buzzed in my pocket constantly now. Unknown numbers. Messages I stopped opening immediately. But one line stuck one day. "You just confirmed yourself inside his system." I started noticing patterns. People avoided direct answers near him. Voices changed tone when I entered rooms. And once, I saw someone delete a message mid-conversation. Right when I walked in. Something was wrong. Not obvious. Not loud. Structural. And then I saw her again. The woman from before. Standing outside his office. Watching me approach. This time, she didn't smile. "You told him," she said quietly. Not a question. I stopped. "Yes." She nodded slowly. Like she already expected it. "He won't thank you," she said. A pause. "He trusts patterns. Not people." That sentence stayed with me longer than I wanted. Because I realized something worse. I hadn't gained trust. I had entered evaluation. Inside his office later, he spoke without looking up. "We're changing security protocols." I froze slightly. That fast. He didn't respond immediately. Then. It already happened. I frowned. "What happened?" He finally looked at me. And said quietly. "We were tested." That word didn't feel corporate. It felt personal. Like something had already passed through us. And we failed without knowing. That night, I stayed late again. Documents spread in front of me. Patterns forming slowly. Too slowly. But clearly. And I saw it. A connection between names. Meetings. Transfers. Small inconsistencies that built into something bigger. Something intentional. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One line. "Now you see it too." I turned off the screen. Slowly. Because I understood something I didn't want to accept yet. Someone was watching my awareness grow. Not his empire. Mine. As I closed the last file, the office door opened behind me. I didn't turn immediately. Because I already knew who it was. And he said one line I wasn't ready for. "We don't have a leak." A pause. "Now we have you." She smiled when she saw me. That's when I knew I didn't belong in his world. Not because she said it. Because she didn't need to. I was standing outside his office when she arrived. Heels first. Then silence. Then her. She didn't rush. People like her never do. She looked at me like I was something left on the floor after an expensive meeting. Not anger. Not curiosity. Dismissal. "You're still here?" she asked softly. I didn't answer immediately. That pause gave her everything she wanted. Control. "I work here," I said. She tilted her head slightly. A smile formed. Not warm. Not kind. "Do you?" One word. Light. Sharp. Enough. The door opened behind her. He stepped out. And for a second. The air changed. Not romantic. Not soft. Structural. Like gravity adjusted. His eyes moved to her first. Then me. But only briefly. Like I was part of the background that still hadn't been removed. "Is everything ready for the call?" he asked her. Her expression changed instantly. Professional. Perfect. "Yes. I handled it." I noticed that word. Handled. Not worked. Not prepared. Handled. Like I was not even part of the system she was referring to. She turned slightly toward me. Can you give us a moment? Not a request. A correction. I looked at him. Not her. He didn't stop her. That was the answer. I stepped aside. Slow. Controlled. But inside. Something tightened. Not jealousy. Something more dangerous. Awareness. The door closed. I stayed outside. Listening to silence that wasn't empty. It was occupied. A message popped on my phone. Unknown number. She has always been part of his decisions. I locked it immediately. But my fingers didn't feel steady anymore. 10 minutes later, the door opened again. She walked out first. He didn't follow immediately. That delay mattered. I noticed it. So did she. She stopped beside me. Lowered her voice slightly. You don't understand his world yet. I looked at her. Then explain it. A pause. Then she smiled again. This time smaller. Sharper. He doesn't keep people close, she said. He keeps them useful. My chest tightened slightly. Not pain. Recognition. Because I already knew that. I just didn't want it confirmed. She leaned in just slightly. And when they stopped being useful. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Then she walked away. Like she had finished something. Not a conversation. A placement. Inside the office, I returned after being called. He was already sitting at the table. Focused on documents. He didn't look up immediately. You were outside long, he said. Not accusation. Observation. I hesitated. There was a visitor. That was all. He flipped a page. Her name is Clara. No emotion. Just fact. So that was her name. Clara. It felt too clean. Too established. Like she had been part of his life long before I entered it. Who is she? I asked before I could stop myself. That was my mistake. Because he finally looked up. A pause. Not surprise. Measurement. Then. She manages external negotiations. Simple. Controlled. But incomplete. I felt it instantly. He wasn't lying. He was filtering. I nodded slowly. Okay. But my voice didn't sound convinced. He noticed. Of course he did. Why does it matter? He asked. That question landed differently. Not defensive. Curious. Detached. I looked at the document on the table. Then back at him. It doesn't. Another lie. But easier than truth. He didn't respond. Just continued reading. But something had shifted slightly. Subtle. Unspoken. Later that day, I stayed behind after a meeting. Not by choice. Because I saw something I shouldn't have. Clara meeting someone in the underground lobby. Not from his company. A rival executive. They weren't shaking hands. They were exchanging something. A file. Small. Quick. Hidden. My breath slowed. I stepped back into the shadow. Watching. Not breathing fully. Because I understood now. This wasn't personal conflict. This was structured betrayal. My phone vibrated. Unknown number again. Now you see her properly. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Because my thoughts were already breaking into pieces. That night, I sat in my small apartment. The contrast between worlds felt heavier than ever. His glass office. Her perfect smile. And me. Just information in the middle. I typed a message. Then deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. Because the truth was simple. If I told him, I would be stepping into something I couldn't step back from. But if I didn't, I was already part of it. The next morning, he called me earlier than usual. Meeting in 10 minutes. No greeting. No softness. Just timing. I walked in. Clara was already there. Of course she was. She didn't look at me this time. Not even briefly. That was intentional. He started the meeting. Business as usual. But I noticed something else. He let her speak more today. More than me. More than anyone. And I realized something uncomfortable. She wasn't competing with me. She was positioned above me in history. Not hierarchy. History. Halfway through, I finally spoke. There's a discrepancy in the report. Everyone turned slightly. Clara included. But this time, her expression didn't change. She already expected it. He looked at me. Explain. So I did. Carefully. Precisely. And when I finished. Silence. Clara spoke softly. That's not relevant to current operations. But I saw it. A flicker. Just a flicker. He didn't react immediately. That delay again. Then. Noted. One word. Neutral. But not dismissive. Not acceptance either. Something in between. The meeting ended. People left. Clara walked out first. But before she did, she looked at me. Just once. Longer than before. And said quietly, "You're becoming expensive." Then she left. I stayed behind. Because he didn't dismiss me immediately. That alone felt different. He finally spoke. "You saw something yesterday." Not a question. A reminder. I nodded. Yes. A pause. Then. "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" That question again. Always that question. I wasn't sure what it meant, I said carefully. Half truth. Half survival. He stood slowly. Walked closer. Not threatening. But closing distance always felt like pressure. "You hesitate too much," he said. I looked up. "Or I think too much." That surprised him slightly. Not much. But enough. A pause. Then. "That will either save you," he said quietly. "Or destroy you here." Silence. Heavy. Final. I should have left. But I didn't. Because something inside me was changing. Not loyalty. Not fear. Something worse. Curiosity about what I was becoming inside his world. As I turned to leave, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. This time only one line. "Clara isn't your rival." A pause. Then. "She's the reason you were hired." The first crack wasn't loud. It was silence where money used to answer. I noticed it in the morning inbox. Fewer replies. Longer delays. Then. One cancelled contract. Then another. By noon, the office didn't feel like control anymore. It felt like damage control pretending to be normal. Phones rang constantly. No one smiled when they picked them up. That was the first real sign. I walked into the meeting room. He was already there. No greeting. No movement. Just a screen full of red alerts reflected in his eyes. "You saw it?" he asked without looking at me. I nodded once. Yes. That was enough. No emotion wasted. A pause. Then. "Explain it." Simple. Heavy. Not curiosity. Pressure. I opened my laptop. Slides. Numbers. Transfers. And something worse. Patterns. "There's a withdrawal pattern," I said quietly. 3 investors pulled out within the same hour. A pause. They didn't act independently. The assistant shifted. "That's coincidence." I shook my head slightly. "It's coordination." Silence followed. Not disbelief. Discomfort. He finally looked at me. Fully this time. "Who coordinated it?" I hesitated. That hesitation again. It didn't escape him. It never did. "I don't know," I said carefully. But I added. "Someone inside is feeding timing." That part landed harder. The room went still. Even the assistant stopped moving. He leaned back slightly. "Show me proof." Not doubt. Not trust. Control. I slid a file forward. Screenshots. Logs. Meeting overlaps. Names redacted, but not fully hidden. He studied it without blinking. Too long. Then. "This could be misinterpreted," he said. That sentence changed the air. Because it wasn't denial. It was refusal to collapse. Pride holding the structure together. I looked at him. Carefully. "Or it's exactly what it looks like." A pause. "Someone is timing your losses." A silence stretched. Longer than necessary. He closed the file. Not abruptly. Slowly. Like rejecting reality needed dignity. "Continue operations," he said finally. The assistant blinked. "Sir." He raised a hand. That ended it. And just like that. Evidence didn't matter. Only decision did. I followed him out of the room. Not because I agreed. Because I was still inside his system. Outside, people were moving faster now. Phones pressed to ears. Voices sharper. Something had already spread. And I wasn't sure who started it. A notification popped on my phone. Unknown number. He won't accept it until it breaks completely. I locked the screen immediately. But my hands felt colder now. That afternoon, investors started calling directly. Not the assistant. Him. I stood nearby during one of the calls. Not supposed to. But no one stopped me anymore. Because I was already too deep inside visibility. His voice stayed calm the entire time. Too calm. That kind of calm only exists when pressure is being absorbed, not resolved. When he ended the call, he didn't sit. Didn't react. Just stayed standing. You saw it too clearly, he said suddenly. I looked up. What? He turned slightly. The pattern. A pause. That's what makes it dangerous. I frowned slightly. Seeing clearly is dangerous. A faint pause. Then. For me, he said. Not explanation. Admission. That was the first time I heard limitation in his voice. Not weakness. Constraint. Later, I stayed behind again. The office was quieter now. Not peaceful. Empty in a pressured way. Like something had been removed but not replaced. I reviewed the data again. And noticed something I missed earlier. One investor didn't just withdraw. They accelerated exit after a private meeting. With Clara. My chest tightened slightly. So it wasn't random. It never was. I didn't send the message immediately. I stared at it. Because I knew what would happen if I did. He wouldn't ask questions first. He would decide first. And I wasn't sure anymore if I wanted him to decide correctly. Or quickly. That thought disturbed me more than the betrayal itself. The door opened behind me. He returned. Quiet. Tired in a way I hadn't seen before. Not physically. Mentally. You're still here, he said. I nodded slightly. Yes. A pause. Then. Why? That question wasn't procedural. It was personal by accident. I hesitated. Then said. Because it doesn't stop when I leave. That made him look at me longer. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he walked to the window. Looked outside. Not at the city. Through it. They're targeting timing, I said quietly. They're not attacking the company directly. A pause. They're weakening confidence. He nodded slightly. Finally. Not agreement. Recognition. But then. He said something that surprised me. They want reaction, not truth. A pause. If I react wrong, I lose more than money. That was the first time I understood his hesitation. It wasn't pride alone. It was calculation paralysis. Too many outcomes collapsing at once. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The room felt suspended. Not broken. Just waiting. Then my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. This time? No text. Just an image. I froze slightly. It was Clara. Standing with someone I didn't recognize. Handing over something small. A drive. I looked up slowly. And saw him already watching me. Show me, he said quietly. I didn't move immediately. Because now, I wasn't sure what showing him would trigger. Truth. Or collapse. I turned the screen toward him. He looked once. Just once. And something in his expression finally changed. Not anger. Not shock. Something deeper. Recognition of betrayal he had already feared. But instead of reacting, he said only one thing. Of course. Quiet. Final. Too controlled. And that scared me more than anything else. Because I realized. He wasn't surprised. He was confirming. I stepped back slightly. You knew? A pause. Then. I suspected. No emotion. Just truth arriving too late. For the first time, I saw the empire not collapsing, but being allowed to collapse. Strategically. And I didn't know which was worse. As I reached for my phone to call out what I saw, he stopped me. Not forcefully. Just with one sentence. Don't send anything yet. A pause. Then quietly. Because now I need to know who survives when I do nothing. The room didn't explode. It went silent first, and that silence was worse. I still remember the way the air changed before everything collapsed. Not noise. Not chaos. Just stillness. Like the world was holding its breath. The conference room was full. Investors. Board members. Executives. And him. Standing at the center like nothing could touch him. That's what he believed. Until I started translating. The first document came up on screen. Clean. Official. Too clean. My voice stayed steady. Even when my hands didn't. This report shows financial movement across 3 offshore accounts, I translated. A pause. Then I continued. And discrepancies between declared and actual investor withdrawals. I felt it before I saw it. The shift. People leaning forward. Phones lowering. Attention sharpening. He glanced at me briefly. Not stopping me. Just watching. Like he was waiting to see where I would break. Then the second file opened. And everything changed. A new set of records. Emails. Private messages. Internal approvals. My throat tightened slightly as I read. But I didn't stop. Unauthorized information flow detected between internal advisory and external competitor networks. A pause. I looked up once. And saw her. Clara. Sitting 2 rows ahead. Unmoved. She didn't blink. That was the worst part. The room started reacting now. Whispers. Shifts in seats. Someone said something under their breath. Then louder. That's impossible. But I kept going. Because the truth doesn't stop for disbelief. There is confirmation of coordinated timing between investor withdrawal and internal communication leaks. Silence hit again. He didn't move. Not yet. Then Clara stood up. Slow. Controlled. Like she had planned the moment. She stood for a long time. This is manipulated, she said calmly. Her voice didn't shake. That's how I knew she had rehearsed it. I looked at her. Then at him. He still hadn't reacted. Not fully. Clara turned toward the investors. I can prove these logs were altered. A pause. And misrepresented. My fingers tightened slightly around the tablet. Because I knew what I had seen. And it wasn't altered. It was assembled. Someone interrupted. Show counter evidence. A demand. Not a question. Clara smiled faintly. Then placed a folder on the table. Perfect timing. Too perfect. But before she could open it, I spoke. I already verified these records. My voice cut through the room. Quiet. Clear. Every head turned. Including his. Finally. Clara looked at me for the first time properly. Not dismissive anymore. Something else. Calculation. You verified what was given to you, she said softly. A pause. Not what was missing. That sentence hit differently. Because it implied structure. Not accident. I felt it then. Something deeper under the surface. This wasn't just betrayal. It was design. I turned slightly toward him. Waiting. For instruction. For reaction. For anything. He finally spoke. Continue. Just that. So I did. The final file opened. This one wasn't corporate. It was personal. Emails between Clara and external executives. Strategic coordination. Timeline alignment. Names redacted, but not enough. The room shifted instantly. No one was whispering now. Everyone was listening. Fully. I read the last line out loud. Final phase begins upon CEO exposure event. Silence again. But different this time. Sharp. Final. Someone stood up abruptly. This is sabotage. Another voice. We need clarification immediately. Chaos began forming at the edges. But he still hadn't moved. Not yet. Clara stepped forward. Her voice dropped lower now. Controlled but intense. You think this is exposure? A pause. This is correction. That word landed heavier than everything else. Correction. Not attack. Not betrayal. System reset. And then. He finally moved. Slowly. One step forward. Then another. He didn't look at her first. He looked at me. And for the first time since I entered his world. He saw me. Not as translator. Not as staff. Not as tool. As the one holding the collapse together long enough for it to be understood. Something in his expression changed. Not softness. Recognition. Late recognition. You knew this would happen, he said quietly. Not accusation. Understanding too late arriving. I swallowed. No. A pause. I knew something would. Silence. Heavy again. Clara spoke from behind. You always trusted structure over people. He didn't turn. But he heard her. And you, he said quietly. Trusted proximity over truth. That was for me. Not harsh. Accurate. My chest tightened slightly. Because it was true. More than I wanted. The room erupted again. Arguments. Demands. Confusion. But none of it reached the center anymore. Because the collapse wasn't happening anymore. It had already happened. We were just inside it. Security started moving in. People were escorted out. Voices fading down the hallway. Until only a few remained. Me, him, Clara. And silence that now felt final. He walked past the table slowly. Stopped near me. Not close enough to touch. But close enough to change air pressure. You should have told me earlier, he said quietly. My voice came softer than I expected. I did. A pause. You didn't hear it. That landed differently. Not blame. Reality. Clara laughed once under her breath. Barely audible. That's the problem, she said. No one ever hears until it costs them something. He finally looked at her fully. Long. Still. Then he said something I didn't expect. I did hear it. A pause. I just didn't believe it yet. That was the first crack in him. Not financial. Human. The room emptied completely. Only echoes remained. And the weight of everything said too late. I looked at him. Really looked. For the first time without urgency. Without fear. Without role. And I saw it. Tiredness. Not weakness. But consequence. He noticed me watching. You stayed, he said quietly. Not question. Observation. I nodded once. Yes. A pause. I didn't know where else to go. That was more honest than anything I had said in weeks. Clara picked up her bag. Stopped at the door. Looked back once. At both of us. You didn't lose because of me, she said softly. A pause. You lost because you delayed reality. Then she left. Silence returned. But different now. Not tense. Empty. He finally spoke again. What do you want now? That question wasn't about job. It was about alignment. I hesitated. Because the answer wasn't simple anymore. Not survival. Not money. Not even truth. I don't know, I admitted. That honesty felt heavier than any translation I had done. He nodded slowly. Like he accepted that. Not fixed it. Accepted it. Then he said quietly. Then don't decide today. A pause. Just stay. And for the first time, it didn't sound like control. It sounded like uncertainty. As I stepped out of the ruined conference room, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One line only. He didn't lose the company today. A pause. He lost the person who built it. As the one holding the collapse together long enough for it to be understood. Something in his expression changed. Not softness. Recognition. Late recognition. You knew this would happen, he said quietly. Not accusation. Understanding too late arriving. I swallowed. No. A pause. I knew something would. Silence. Heavy again. Clara spoke from behind. You always trusted structure over people. He didn't turn. But he heard her. And you, he said quietly. Trusted proximity over truth. That was for me. Not harsh. Accurate. My chest tightened slightly. Because it was true. More than I wanted. The room erupted again. Arguments. Demands. Confusion. But none of it reached the center anymore. Because the collapse wasn't happening anymore. It had already happened. We were just inside it. Security started moving in. People were escorted out. Voices fading down the hallway. Until only a few remained. Me. Him. Clara. And silence that now felt final. He walked past the table slowly. Stopped near me. Not close enough to touch. But close enough to change air pressure. You should have told me earlier, he said quietly. My voice came softer than I expected. I did. A pause. You didn't hear it. That landed differently. Not blame. Reality. Clara laughed once under her breath. Barely audible. That's the problem, she said. No one ever hears until it costs them something. He finally looked at her fully. Long. Still. Then he said something I didn't expect. I did hear it. A pause. I just didn't believe it yet. That was the first crack in him. Not financial. Human. The room emptied completely. Only echoes remained. And the weight of everything said too late. I looked at him. Really looked. For the first time without urgency. Without fear. Without role. And I saw it. Tiredness. Not weakness. But consequence. He noticed me watching. You stayed, he said quietly. Not question. Observation. I nodded once. Yes. A pause. I didn't know where else to go. That was more honest than anything I had said in weeks. Clara picked up her bag. Stopped at the door. Looked back once. At both of us. You didn't lose because of me, she said softly. A pause. You lost because you delayed reality. Then she left. Silence returned. But different now. Not tense. Empty. He finally spoke again. What do you want now? That question wasn't about job. It was about alignment. I hesitated. Because the answer wasn't simple anymore. Not survival. Not money. Not even truth. I don't know, I admitted. That honesty felt heavier than any translation I had done. He nodded slowly. Like he accepted that. Not fixed it. Accepted it. Then he said quietly. Then don't decide today. A pause. Just stay. And for the first time, it didn't sound like control. It sounded like uncertainty. As I stepped out of the ruined conference room, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One line only. He didn't lose the company today. A pause. He lost the person who built it. He called my name like it was the first time he needed something from someone. I almost didn't recognize him alone. No boardroom. No assistants. No noise of power surrounding him. Just him. And the silence he used to control, now controlling him. He stood by the window when I entered. Not turning immediately. That was new. He always noticed everything instantly before. I need you, he said finally. No title. No authority. Just need. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence sit between us. Because for the first time, I could. He turned slightly. You're doing that on purpose, he said. A pause. Making me wait. I looked at him. Yes. One word. Clean. Something in his jaw tightened. Not anger. Frustration. But controlled. Too controlled. He took a step closer. Is this about revenge? I tilted my head slightly. No. A pause. Not anymore. That confused him. I could see it. Because he expected simple emotions. Pain. Anger. Forgiveness. All predictable. But I wasn't predictable anymore. He exhaled slowly. They're leaving faster than I can stop them. A pause. I need clarity. I didn't move. Clarity doesn't fix timing, I said. It only explains it after it breaks. Silence. That hit him. I saw it in his eyes. Not rejection. Comprehension. Too late. For a moment, he looked smaller. Not physically. But something had shifted in how he occupied space. Like the world wasn't adjusting to him anymore. You always saw more than you said, he murmured. I didn't deny it. Because it was true. A phone buzzed on the table. He didn't pick it up. That was another first. Instead, he looked at me again. Tell me what I missed. I let that question hang. Longer than comfortable. Longer than professional. Then I said quietly. You missed people. A pause. Not systems. His expression tightened slightly. Not defensively. But inwardly. You think I didn't see them? He asked. I shook my head. No. A pause. You saw them as variables. That silence was different. He didn't interrupt. That meant it landed. He sat down slowly. Not because he was told to. Because standing didn't feel necessary anymore. For the first time, he didn't feel above the room. Just inside it. I built everything carefully, he said quietly. A pause. And it still fell. I looked at him. That was the moment. Not collapse. Realization of collapse. There's a difference. You built it fast, I said. That's not the same as carefully. He didn't respond immediately. Just stared at the floor for a second too long. Then. What do you want from me now? That question wasn't command. It was uncertainty wearing his voice. I stepped slightly closer. Not enough to comfort him. Just enough for honesty. I don't want anything from you, I said. A pause. That's the problem. That made him look up. Finally. Fully. Because that sentence didn't give him control. Or rejection. It gave him absence. You're leaving? He asked quietly. I didn't answer immediately. Because the answer wasn't simple. I thought about everything. The translation. The lies. The collapse. The silence I learned to survive inside. No, I said finally. A pause. I'm not leaving. His expression shifted slightly. Relief tried to form. But didn't fully arrive. Because I continued. I just stopped being where you expected me. Silence. Heavy again. For the first time, he didn't have a response ready. That alone felt like balance shifting. He stood slowly. Not towering. Just present. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. That was the first real crack. Not pride breaking. Structure dissolving. I nodded once. I know. A pause. Then I added quietly. That's why it's falling. He looked at me for a long moment. Not analyzing. Not calculating. Just seeing. And something in his eyes changed. Not love. Not yet. Something more dangerous. Understanding he couldn't undo what he became. I didn't think you'd stay this long, he said. I gave a small, tired smile. I didn't either. Silence stretched again. But it wasn't hostile anymore. It was empty space where power used to be. He walked back toward the window. Then stopped halfway. Like he forgot where control was supposed to exist. My pride ruined everything, he said quietly. Not excuse. Observation. I answered without hesitation. No. A pause. You did. That honesty hit differently. He didn't argue. Because for the first time, he couldn't. Ending hook. As I turned to leave, he spoke one last time behind me. Not loud. Not commanding. Just broken in structure. If I had met you earlier. I stopped at the door. He didn't finish the sentence. Because I already knew what it was going to become. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. He didn't look like a billionaire anymore. Just a man trying to hold himself together. The silence between us felt heavier than the collapse outside. No investors. No calls. No chaos. Just him. And me. He spoke first. But not like before. Not controlled. Not sharp. I underestimated you, he said quietly. A pause. His eyes didn't leave the floor at first. I used you. That last sentence didn't come out clean. It broke slightly in the middle. Like it cost him something to say it out loud. I didn't respond. Not immediately. Because some truths don't need interruption. They need space to exist. He continued. I thought you were temporary. A pause. Replaceable. My chest tightened slightly. Not pain. Clarity. Because I already knew that part. I just hadn't heard it from him. He finally looked up. And that's when I saw it. Not authority. Not control. Loss of both. I didn't see you as someone who would matter after the problem was solved, he said. His voice lowered. Now I can't solve anything without you. Silence. That line didn't sound romantic. It sounded like consequence. I shifted slightly. You're not used to needing people, I said quietly. A pause. You're used to using them. That landed. Harder than anything else. Because he didn't deny it. Instead, he nodded once. Slow. Yes. Just that. No defense. No excuse. For the first time, he didn't fight the truth. He sat with it. A long silence followed. Not empty. Heavy with realization finally arriving late. Then he said something lower. Almost quieter than breath. I didn't think you'd stay long enough to see this side of me. I looked at him carefully. And now? A pause. What do you think I see? He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation mattered. I think you see everything I tried to hide, he said finally. A pause. And didn't succeed. Something in my expression softened slightly. Not forgiveness. Understanding. Different thing entirely. He took a step closer. Not controlling this time. Careful. Like distance itself had become uncertain. Stay, he said. Simple. No manipulation. No structure. Just request. That word hit differently now. Because I wasn't the same person who accepted jobs out of survival. I looked at him for a long moment. Not anger. Not love. Something in between neither of those words fits. You're asking me to stay after everything, I said quietly. A pause. That's not easy. He nodded once. I know. Silence again. But this one felt different. Less like pressure. More like truth waiting for decision. I don't trust easy decisions anymore, I said. A pause. Especially here. His jaw tightened slightly. Not at me. At himself. I don't expect trust, he said. A pause. I just don't want you gone. That was the first time his voice carried something unprotected. Not strategy. Not control. Need. Raw. Late. And it scared me more than his power ever did. Because power was predictable. But regret was not. I walked slowly toward the window, looking outside. At the world he once controlled completely, now slipping in pieces. You built your life on certainty, I said quietly. A pause. And now you're living inside uncertainty. He didn't answer. Because that was accurate. Behind me, I heard him move slightly. Not closing distance. Just existing closer than before. I don't want to repeat everything, I said. My voice steadier now. I don't want to become part of another system I can't leave. Silence. Then. I'm not asking you to be part of anything, he said. A pause. I'm asking you to stay while I learn how to not need systems. That sentence was different. It wasn't promise. It was admission of incompleteness. I turned back slowly. You think you can change that? He didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't know. Because he wasn't sure. I don't know, he admitted. A pause. But I know what happens if you leave. My expression tightened slightly. And what happens? He looked at me fully. No filter now. Just truth. Nothing holds anymore. A pause. And I don't think I survived that version of me. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't about business. It was about identity breaking apart in real time. I stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough to see him clearly. You're not asking me to save you, I said quietly. A pause. You're asking me to witness it. He didn't deny it. That was the answer. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Because something between us had shifted. Not resolved. But exposed. And exposure changes everything. Even silence. As I reached for the door, ready to leave the room, he spoke one last time. Not loudly. Not as a CEO. Just as him. If you walk out now. A pause. I won't ask again. And I realized. That wasn't a threat. That was surrender dressed as final choice.